Right across regional South Australia, Victoria and southern New South Wales, here on Flow FM, we're speaking with Dr. Michael Robertson. He's the Director of CSIRO's Agriculture and Food Program. How are you today?
I'm very well, thank you, Ricky.
Great to be joined by you on the day that the State of the Climate 2022 report is out. From your perspective, what are the key takeaways?
This is a report we produce every year with the Bureau of Meteorology. It's a really significant stocktake of what's happening to Australia's climate, where it's been changing in recent times, but also where it's heading in the future. It's really confirming a lot of the trends we already know and understand. Rising CO2, a general warming trend in our climate, declining rainfall in the south of the country, increasing rainfall in the north of the country, changes in patterns around cyclones, snowfall, hail, the sorts of things that we've been experiencing as Australians as we, experience the climate as it unfolds for us.
Well, farmers on the land in our broadcast areas all remember quite vividly and tragically the impact of drought, and now some, particularly in southern New South Wales, have got crops underwater. Is this attributable to climate change?
Climate scientists have been telling us for quite some time now that climate change will result in more extreme weather. So we will be seeing longer and deeper droughts. We will be seeing also more intense rainfall events as well, and the floods that are associated with that. So while it might seem counterintuitive that we're seeing floods in a time where we're saying there's going to be an overall drying trend associated with climate change, particularly for the southern half of Australia, flood events are actually quite in line with what climate scientists are telling us in terms of the intensity that we'll see in our weather systems in the future.
When the report says in its headline that we're going to have, that Australia is continuing to warm, again, that seems counterintuitive at the moment. How do we take the longer term perspective on this?
Well, you're dead right. I mean, I'm based in Perth, Ricky, and we've just had our coldest November, I think, for 20 years. And people might scratch their heads and say, well, what's this all to do with a general warming trend? Well, just when you look at the overall average yearly temperature, we are continually see a warming trend in our climate record. So since records were started to collect in Australia in about 1910, our average annual temperature has risen by 1.5 degrees. Now, that may not seem by very much an increase, but what's associated with that is more extremes. So we're seeing more heat waves. We're also seeing more frosts in some parts of the country. And overall, more days that are above certain warm thresholds.
Well, I noticed some farmers picked up that, we'll look at Warragamba Dam, Wyangala Dam, and the water pumping over the top of that, calls to have more dams, but leave that debate for others, perhaps. But there's plenty of water in the dams at the moment. Is there some way that we can sort of adapt to this variability in climate to make sure we do look after agricultural production in Australia?
Absolutely. So the big challenge for agriculture is how do we manage the ups and downs of our rainfall patterns? And some of it will be through water storages like dams. There'll be other clever things that we can look at farmers doing in terms of new technology to help capture more rainfall in our soils by improving our soils and how we manage them. Other technologies around using our underground aquifers as water banks. So during these times of floods, pumping water underground where it can stay safe from being evaporated away and then withdrawn again, like a bank, during a dry spell for something like, say, irrigation. There's also ongoing technology innovation around using water more efficiently too, and particularly in our irrigated agriculture, which is the single biggest user of water in Australia. Not many people understand that, but our irrigated agriculture uses more water than any other sector in the economy.
Well, I understand Dr. Michael Robertson, Director of CSIRO Agriculture and Food. The CSIRO also has been giving farmers tools to actually identify that variability in climate at a pretty micro level for their own farms. Yes,
this is work that's been funded by the Commonwealth Government through its Future Drought Fund. That's work we've been doing in partnership with the Bureau of Meteorology. It's fascinating, as I have done, when you go out and have conversations with farmers about their climate and look at what's been happening and the trends in their local climate, say, over the last 20 or 30 years. And you have some wonderful conversations with them in terms of the droughts they remember, the floods they remember. But overall, what they get is that sort of picture, that trend, that gives them the overall pattern of change that often you don't see when it's sort of sneaking up on you year by year. And so the tools that we've been developing, funded by the Commonwealth Government and working with the Bureau, have been instrumental in providing the data for farmers to be able to have those conversations about what's happening to their local climate. And we're getting a lot of positive feedback about that.
Yeah, I imagine it's quite a productivity tool potentially as well, because you're not only operating, I guess, in tune with what's being recorded scientifically about your soil and your local climate, but also planning ahead, forward planning for your farm, what you might do with a particular area of the farm.
Yeah, that's where forecasts come into play. Australia's made quite big gains over the last few years in terms of its seasonal forecasting. So using things like the El Nino, La Nina cycle, the Indian Ocean dipole is another measure that we use to sort of forecast general patterns of change in our weather systems. And many farmers have been picking up on that for the last 20 or 30 years and building that into particularly their medium and longer term planning about what they'll do on the farm. Certainly not the short term planning like what they'll do next week, because they'll use the weather forecast that we all use for that sort of decision making. But that sort of seasonal scale of time frame is one where we're seeing a lot more advance in the accuracy of those seasonal forecasts.
Well, it's certainly encouraging to see our Chief Science Agency working with farmers about how to be productive, but doing even better with the land practices that they've got. Dr. Michael Robertson from the CSIRO, thanks for joining us today on Flow.
Thank you.